PragerU, everyone's favorite reactionary propaganda channel, has released a new video as the time of recording yesterday. Just thought we'd have a quick look at it, try and see what they're arguing, maybe debunk a little bit of it. So let's go.
What's happening in our schools?
Shootings, that's what.
Colleges have become leftist indoctrination centers.
Ah yes, the standard claim of PragerU. Let's see what more they have to say about this.
It's not a new problem. It's been going on for decades, first behind the scenes and now out front. That's how radical change happens. It creeps up on us. And when we finally figure out what's going on, it's too late.
Ah yes, this creeping threat of radical change. PragerU's argument here seems to bear a lot of resemblance to the slippery slope argument. Essentially, any economic or social justice progress we make could pave the way for more and more radical reforms, and all of a sudden America is some hyper-woke anarcho-syndicalist nation. The problem with this thinking is it stifles all calls for change, historically bad for pretty much everyone but the upper crust. Just for an example of how political stagnation helps the top, just think of the Gilded Age in American history. Anyway, it just speaks to the quality of the video that the first example, or like the first thing they show, is a classic reactionary argument. And a really bad one at that.
What's been happening on college campuses is now happening in elementary schools and high schools. I know. I'm a mom of 2 school-aged kids. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Because anecdotal evidence is always good. I like how the facts don't care about your feelings, right? Just pretty much just opens with an emotional argument that relies on anecdotal evidence. It's pretty ironic.
More and more parents are seeing it too. Thanks to the lockdowns and Zoom, we're getting a window into our children's classes.
And now I'm sure you'll dazzle us with reputable statistics.
It's not a pretty picture. Kids, really young kids, are being taught stuff so radical, so devoid of what real education is, it should alarm us all.
The only thing that has been up to this point is just far-right scaremongering. They've not presented a single good argument, a single statistic. We're 20% through the video, and just nothing... about 20%, and just there's been no substance to it. It's just been like scaremongering.
Here are a few examples.
Ah yes, a few examples. I see we're on a roll with shitty anecdotal evidence.
Recently, Chicago Public Schools adopted an American history curriculum based on the 1619 Project published and promoted by the New York Times. The 1619 Project asserts that America's founding was not marked by the Declaration of Independence in 1776, but the arrival of the first African slaves in Jamestown in 1619. Historians from across the political spectrum have denounced this as a giant lie.
Okay, so this is very, very misleading. So historians have talked about certain parts of it as a lie, but have not talked just about the entire project as a lie. Because basically what the project is designed to do is reframe American history, like from the perspective of slavery, and sort of raise slavery's influence, or raise the perception of slavery's influence in early American and modern, I guess, in just American history. But that is not being seen as a lie. Like mainstream historians know that slavery was a gigantic part in American history. Okay, and you'd be really hard pressed to construct a historical argument that like slavery didn't play a huge part and still doesn't play a huge part in America.
The New York Times has walked back many of the project's original claims.
Like a good publication when presented with other facts. Yes, this is a good thing, okay? It shows that they're willing to react to criticism. They're willing to modify what they said based on the evidence.
Still, this malicious slander of America is now being taught in schools as truth.
Okay, so first of all, I'm pretty sure the New York Times, again, when you said the New York Times rolled back their claims, I'm pretty sure they rolled back their claims that weren't true. So first of all, it is true. And second of all, most of history is just like a matter of perspective. But yeah, I'm not going to die on the 1619 Project was amazing hill. Because obviously it wasn't, but definitely worked toward a noble goal, which is to keep redefining how we see American history. History can't be like some stagnant thing. Our history right now is totally different from the way like a Victorian era historian would view it. And, it's going to continue to change. And I think this was just one aspect of the change. 1619 Project wasn't like radical and revolutionary. It just was continuing the process of historical change that is always going on.
And what is that truth? That America is, was, and always has been a fundamentally racist country, and that white...
True. Look at any of the facts. First, enslavement by race, then Jim Crow, and now continuing problems stemming from slavery and Jim Crow's legacy. All of these are very well documented. You'd be extremely hard-pressed to construct a serious fact-based historical argument disproving them.
White Americans today bear responsibility for all current and historic racism.
This is a complete liberal straw man. You couldn't find a school that was seriously trying to teach this. Like that, the 1619 Project seriously doesn't go this far.
This bleeds perfectly into another educational debacle: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, this might sound innocent, but don't be fooled.
Oh no, diversity coming to destroy the white race! PragerU, what BS you're going to throw at us now?
It's a dangerous euphemism for something called critical race theory.
Critical race theory. Okay, so what's wrong with it? It's presented as the boogeyman here. But can you actually explain what's wrong with it, PragerU?
Critical race theory says that racism is woven into the very fabric of American society. What does this look like in a...
Again, I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier. That is very well documented. Yes, it is true.
School setting, middle and high school students in Wellesley, Massachusetts, are being taught to be on the lookout for unconscious racial bias in their classmates. We need your help.
Okay, first of all, implicit bias is really, it's well documented. It's an actual thing. So basically, it's like the snap assumptions that you make when you see a person. And a school trying to... And the thing they're going to show, I'll just show it and then I'll go against it.
Email to students reads, "Your school leaders will be working with you this year on how to be proactive about preventing bias incidents and how to report them should they occur."
This seems just like basic anti-racism training. One school trying to basically just get rid of racism. It isn't bad. It isn't like some leftist conspiracy to like make black people our kings. Like, come on, man. Come on.
This warped vision of America doesn't...
Not warped. Look at the facts.
...stop at race. In Colorado...
Ooh, you're going to tell us there's something about class in here as well?
Colorado, first graders
gender.
are being taught that just because someone looks like a boy doesn't mean they are. Only they can know who they truly are.
Yes.
Gender is something they choose for themselves.
Yes.
Based on how masculine or feminine they feel.
Yes.
Or maybe they're not fully a boy or a girl, but something in between. Whatever that may be.
Everything that you just said that the school is teaching is incredibly based. Probably the most based that you've ever seen anything that you've said in this entire video.
To repeat, that's what children are taught in first grade.
Yes, it is very important to teach kids that they should be able to express themselves how they want to early on. Trans suicide is very high, and making children more comfortable with trans issues, it follows that it would lead to less suicide.
Imagine what they're taught in second or third grade.
The exact same thing, dumbass.
And, of course, the world faces imminent disaster from global warming.
Only petrol billionaires like your good friend Dennis Prager don't do anything.
The American Federation of Teachers has fully endorsed the most radical aspects of the Green New Deal.
When will conservatives stop screeching about the Green New Deal? Also, the source they cite here for this in their sources webpage is complete garbage. It is a blog, not even an article. It's a blog on how climate change fear-mongering is bad. Like, you're really stooping low if you're relying on, like, a blog to try and enforce your claim.
which is already featured in California school curriculums. In sum, many of our schools are teaching children that our past is terrible and that they have no future.
Okay, so this is obviously just meant to sum up PragerU's argument. So again, just to repeat some of the counters to this, to counter the first statement, admitting that our past has flaws and it was not all like sunshine and roses doesn't make it terrible, it makes it real. Also, should the goal of the schools be to teach the facts about U.S. history or to instill nationalistic pride in a false one? The latter seems awfully fascist. Again, with the no future thing, being realistic about the fate of the planet does not equate to telling kids that they have no future. Indeed, we still have time to turn global warming around. This also plays into my previous criticism. Should schools tell kids the truth or a sugar-coated truth? I believe in the truth, but it's obvious that PragerU reactionaries do not. Oh, the irony for the facts don't care about your feelings right.
That if they are white, they are racist whether they know it or not.
Again, implicit bias exists. Once you recognize it, however, you could start to work against it. And I believe this is where schools are going with their racism curricula, a hopeful message that you can overcome your racist tendencies taught to you by society. And again, this is just fact-based. Most of the things they're railing against in this video is the adoption of evidence-based and fact-based curriculums by schools. What are schools going to do? What else are schools going to do besides tell kids the facts? Tell them, racist propaganda like PragerU dispenses?
If they're black, they're victims, whether they experience it or not.
Replace this with whether they know it or not, okay? Again, tons of research on structural and all kinds of racism in this country, okay? Stop.
That they should constantly question their sexual identity. With all this being drummed into their heads, no wonder today's kids have more psychological problems than any previous generation.
In one rare instance, they actually have a bunch of sources to back this up. However, they don't go the extra step. This is a completely bullshit argument because they never draw causation. All they're saying is that the adoption of evidence-based curriculums in schools is correlated with a rise in mental illnesses, but they don't account for causation. They don't make the next step as to whether it causes. That's always the thing with research. The big work is proving whether it causes. There's so many other factors to look for. How do you know that this is causing the rise in mental illness? How do you know it's not rising inequality? How do you know it's not, the fact that the earth is literally on fire? How do you know that it's this, oh wow, well, our country's history is flawed mentality from the... it's just a crappy argument. They're supposed to be a university. They're supposed to actually know stuff about researching and constructing arguments, and yet this argument is completely bullshit.
Maybe you think I'm cherry-picking examples to exaggerate my point.
Yes, I do.
Or maybe you're one of the lucky ones who sends your kids to a school that has yet to be infected by this radical agenda. Maybe. But if I were you, I would...
And now here comes the call to action. Let's see what they have to say.
Wouldn't take it on faith. Find out for yourself. When I did, I was shocked to learn that all of this is happening in my school district.
Again, garbage anecdotal evidence. PragerU, you're physically making me hurt.
Right now. So find out what's being taught in your kid's school. Take a good hard look at curricula. Ask administrators if they endorse the 1619 project. Are they pushing a diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda? If so, demand to see what materials the school is using. At a minimum, get to know your kids' teachers and principals. Join the PTA, attend local school board meetings, look for allies, reasonable, like-minded parents.
Again, I really don't... This is probably the one thing that I don't have an issue with them saying. Parents have a right to be involved in their kids' education. That's probably the only thing that I'll ever agree with PragerU on.
You don't have to agree with each other on everything. You just have to agree that the brainwashing of our children stops here.
Yes, brainwashing of your children by reactionary propaganda sites like you, PragerU.
Stops now. Americans know what our children should be learning.
The facts, not your whitewashed garbage.
That they must take responsibility for their conduct. That race is the least important aspect of another person. That hard work and rational thought are things we all value. That there is nothing wrong with the bodies they were born into. And that America was founded not to promote racism, but to guarantee sacred liberties and opportunities to its citizens.
Again, this is like... Okay, so number one, must take responsibility for their conduct. I think that's good. Like, that's just a general moral statement that everyone has to agree with. The second one, race is the least important aspect of another person. In a perfect world, yes, but to the point of ignoring racism, like, it's bad. Hard work and rational thought are things, okay, that's true. Nothing wrong with bodies they were born into. I mean, if you're going to push towards, like, be accepting of your own body sort of thing, like, yeah, sure. But if you're going to say, oh, well, trans people aren't real, it's a government conspiracy, you know, that's probably where you have to draw the line. And also the last one, it's so debatable. Just talk to an actual non-white supremacist historian, please. But the rest of this is just, you know, the standard, like, donate to us, blah, blah, blah. And as you could see, just another fantastic reactionary propaganda from PragerU that has almost no substance and is mostly fear-mongering about the liberals. Anyway, that's about it. See you next time.